covering sports for 30 years. It's one thing for an exhibition here, there, whatever, but you can't continue to be allowed to build a career without getting into the ring with fighters. And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon.
But does ultimately boxing get damaged?
Well, I think so. But I think boxing damages itself left, right, and centre. But I think the reputability and the credibility of some of these boxing sanctioning bodies is poor anyway.
Nobody can knock him for this. This is now business. This is business. For Jake Paul, absolutely crazy. Jake Paul is a domestic level professional fighter here in the UK.
Stephen A. Smith blasts the announcement, insisting Jake Paul has never treated boxing with the true respect or seriousness the sport requires. He argues Paul's career has been built on exhibitions and carefully selected opponents, featuring retired athletes and fighters long past their prime. Smith says this pattern disrespects the sport and believes the matchup with Anthony Joshua reflects how poorly boxing is being handled overall today globally.
No, he can't continue to get away with stepping into the ring against strikers for the UFC, basketball players, unknown boxers.
Simon Jordan raises deep concerns about the Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul matchup, saying it reflects major problems in modern boxing. He argues that business has overtaken sporting integrity, with fighters and promoters now focusing more on marketing, publicity, and huge paydays than on real, competitive matchups. According to Jordan, boxing is becoming a spectacle rather than a showcase of skill, risking the respect the sport earned over decades. He warns fans and industry insiders that, while profitable, such fights can set a dangerous standard for young fighters and damage the public perception of the sport. Jordan believes this fight is driven by headlines, ticket sales, and social media hype rather than meaningful athletic challenge. He further argues that using a global star like Anthony Joshua to elevate someone who has not faced serious competition hurts the credibility of professional boxing. Turning a championship-level athlete into a promotional tool, he says, minimizes the achievements of those who committed their lives to the sport and worked through legitimate competition to reach the top.
But this, to me, is everything that's wrong with boxing. It's a money play, nothing wrong. I don't begrudge Anthony Joshua getting 50 million quid for an easy night's work. That's fantastic returns. Most people would take it. From the boxing world, Jake Paul is now a professional fighter. Whether we categorise him as a YouTuber or not, he's licensed to fight, which means that the governing body should be suggesting that this is not a fight that possibly they should be looking to sanction.
Yeah.
But they will, because the sanctioning fees will be enormous. Anthony Joshua will not lose his legacy like some people are suggesting, because no one will remember it in 2 or 3 years' time. If he embarrasses himself in there, they'll remember it. If he goes in and knocks him out in 30 seconds flat, or turns it into a little bit more of a sort of Jake LaMotta raging bull, holding him up for a few rounds and then knocking him out, then people will forgive it. He'll get a big bag of money, which most people in the world would take, and move on. And then we'll see if he fights anybody meaningful in the year. I mean, it is like sport has become. And what I got my head around on Saturday night was the entertainment value of Conor Benn and Chris Eubank. The fighting of itself, I could be all pious about it, but the entertainment industry is so prevalent in sport now. This is entertainment. This is going to have hundreds of millions of people watching it. Of course. And Anthony Joshua gets paid, and Jake Paul hopefully gets flattened.
Simon, I know the money's there, but does ultimately boxing get damaged?
Well, I think so. But I think boxing damages itself left, right, and centre. But I think the reputability and the credibility of some of these boxing sanctioning bodies is poor anyway. But I think it does get damaged.
Even if it's an exhibition fight, which it might well be.
Well, then what's the jeopardy in that? If it's an exhibition fight, which it shouldn't be, if it's a proper fight, then Jake Paul is going to get demolished.
Johnny Nelson reacts strongly to the matchup, calling it absolutely crazy and genuinely dangerous. He says this is not a typical crossover event but a real fight with serious stakes and real physical risk. Nelson respects Jake Paul's courage, yet questions the sense in stepping into the ring with a proven heavyweight champion like Anthony Joshua. The shock factor, he explains, comes from the legitimacy of the contest. This is not an exhibition, and any mistake could have serious consequences. Nelson says the boxing community is torn between excitement, curiosity, and concern. He reflects on Jake Paul's rise, noting that while Paul has shown ability and confidence in previous fights, none of his opponents were anywhere near Joshua's level. Nelson views Jake's bravery as admirable but also alarming, given the danger of facing a world-class heavyweight trained for elite competition.
Because of Anthony Joshua's desire to be in the history books, to be a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. To me, it shows me his desire. Pick up 50 million along the way. Nobody can knock him for this. This is now business. This is business. For Jake Paul, absolutely crazy. Jake Paul is a domestic level professional fighter here in the UK. Would he win a British title? No, I don't think so. So now they're putting this domestic level fight in with a former heavyweight 2-time champion of the world. The weight is 245. So I think last time Anthony Joshua weighed around that, it was when he bought Usyk. That means he's got to be fight fit on point, because his last fight he was 18 stone. I think it was 254 against Danny Dubois. So now he's basically saying you've got to get yourself in position, get yourself fit, and get yourself ready for fight. It's not tiddlywinks. This is a fight. It's not a push and a pull, you know. So as long as it's not a push and a pull, and don't put me down and don't touch me in the build up to this fight. You know, I remember when McGregor and Mayweather, they had this little side of don't touch me in the build up to this. If this is a real legitimate fight, Jake Paul is absolutely crazy. If not crazy, he's super brave, and it'll be interesting to see.
Well, what do you think? Yeah, because you said that before when we spoke about it being a proper fight or not. And Eddie Hearn and Paul's promoter Nikisa Badarin have both said in the last couple of days it will be a proper fight. And now you've heard the details: 8 rounds, 3 minutes a round, 10-ounce gloves. Do you believe it when they say that it's going to be a proper fight?
I do believe it because AJ is involved, and I think AJ'd struggle to. He's going to take enough flack over this, but again, it's money talk. So I think AJ will struggle because it's an all-win situation. If he goes in there, Jake Paul lasts the distance. What do you tell you about AJ? Apart from he's just earned an extra 50 million quid. If he goes there and struggles with Jake Paul, then what to say about AJ? Your heydays are well and truly over. If he goes in there and knocks him out, then I'll say that's to be expected. So the glory, there's probably not much glory in it, apart from the haters of Jake Paul to say, right, I've got rid of this kid. I think it's very brave of Jake Paul. So now the problem child has got to believe this fight's actually happening. So now
Tony Jeff provides a balanced and pragmatic perspective, reminding fans that anything can happen in boxing. He explains that preparation, training, and the right mindset can sometimes narrow the gap, even when one fighter has far more experience. Jeff notes that Jake Paul is younger than Anthony Joshua, which could offer advantages in stamina, recovery, and long-term conditioning. However, he openly acknowledges that Paul is still not at Joshua's technical level. Even so, Jeff recognizes that Jake has improved dramatically over recent years and that with solid strategy and commitment, surprising results are always possible in a sport known for its unpredictability. He also highlights Jake Paul's strong work ethic, pointing out that Paul has shown serious dedication in preparing for tougher and more skilled opponents. Jeff argues that while the skill gap still exists, it may not be as wide as critics assume. Discipline, consistent improvement, and mental focus can help reduce physical and experience disadvantages. His perspective brings nuance to the debate, acknowledging Jake's progress while still recognizing the major challenge ahead.
Prime. Where Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, is, well, I'm not going to say he's coming into his prime because he had some great wins earlier on in his career before he lost to Usyk twice. And by the way, when he did lose to Usyk, the last one was a split decision. It was a pretty close fight. So now this fight is matched, and I just want to look at the tail of the tape. Now, looking at the age difference, we've got 28 years old compared to 36 years old. So I guess the advantage there goes a little bit towards Jake Paul. 28-year-old is better than a 36-year-old. But that being said, we've got talking about experience and everything else. What comes with being 36 years old at Anthony Joshua's level. And then, like I mentioned, the heavyweights kind of seem to prime a little bit older. Now, come down to the height and the weight. This is the big one. 6'1" versus 6'6". 200 pound versus 252 pound. We got a 252 pounder in Anthony Joshua. The reach advantage is a lot, which we would expect. Amateur fights, we can see that Jake's only had one, where AJ's had 43, but 43 of them are including at the highest level, Olympic level. And yes, he won the Olympic bloody gold medal, if I don't need to remind you. Then the pro record, Jake Paul has had 13 fights, lost 1. AJ has had 28 fights and he's lost 4 with 25 KOs. And the one person that Jake Paul lost to was Tommy Fury. Now, can we compare Tommy Fury with Anthony Joshua? Not at all. It's like night and day. So now I'm going to talk about the rules of this fight, and I'll give you my prediction, which is going to shock a lot of people after this. So, what are the rules? The bout will take place at a heavyweight, obviously. It's going to be 8 3-minute rounds. You might think, well, that's better for Jake Paul.
Chael Sonnen argues that Jake Paul's critics will finally see the true level of competition he can handle when he steps into the ring with a legitimate professional. Sonnen says this matchup will reveal whether Paul's past success was boosted by carefully selected opponents or if he genuinely belongs in high-level competitive boxing. He believes this fight will act as a reality check, offering clarity to fans, analysts, and the boxing community about Paul's standing in the sport. Sonnen frames the bout as a pivotal moment that will not only define Paul's career but also influence how crossover boxing is viewed moving forward. Sonnen expands on this by emphasizing that facing a world-class heavyweight like Anthony Joshua will expose Paul to real scrutiny from experienced experts and seasoned fighters. He notes that the level of attention surrounding the fight will determine whether Paul's previous wins were based on true skill or the limited ability of earlier opponents. Sonnen suggests that this level of accountability is healthy for boxing, helping reinforce professional standards, elevate expectations, and ensure that public debates are driven by legitimate performance rather than hype and marketing.